For 25 years, BioWare has been at the forefront of powerful, emotionally resonating storytelling in video games. That evolution is told through generations of gaming technology and advancements in what we expect from the stories we love. No one game franchise is more emblematic of this than Dragon Age. Originating over 10 years ago, this series has jumped from engine to engine, playstyle to playstyle, but that one pervading story of Thedas continues on. I'm Andy Burkowski from VGS, Video Game Sophistry, and for the last 10 years, I've had the fortune to speak to developers, writers, and the minds behind Dragon Age. I am even more fortunate today to team up with the new guard, creators who cherish and protect the lore of Dragon Age and also try to make sure you all know everything there is to know about the games.
Hi, I'm Caitie. I run the Ghildirthalen YouTube channel. I really just talk about lore and also read out codex entries for people to hear. I'm just a fan myself, just kind of doing it for fun, just because that's what I like to do.
Hi there guys, I'm Jackdaw, and of course I just run a Dragon Age and Mass Effect news channel, and I just want to keep you all up to date on the updates for Dragon Age 4.
Incredibly modest, but these titans, I will call them that, they are working together with me today to figure out every single piece of data, everything official, every rumor, every passing picture on a screen during a dev diary that may contribute to what we know as Dragon Age 4. And we're going to be doing this for the last 5 years, a 5-year look at everything we think we know. So let's go through it all and figure out everything there is to know about this game we love, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Alrighty.
All right, so we're starting with 2015. There really isn't that much because this is the year Trespasser came out, if many of you remember. I will say, like, both of us, Jack was busy with college, and honestly, this was, I really only got into the series in 2014. So there might be a few things we missed, but at kind of at this rate, there really wasn't that much going on anyway. So I want to say, like, we have most things, but there might be something we missed. We also, just a quick aside, there's some news has come out later in the years, but we place it in our timeline where it would have happened in real life. So the first thing I'm actually about to say was said in 2018, but technically happened in 2015. So that's why I'm talking about it now. So anyway, in 2018, Mark Dara tweeted out just a couple things. A lot of these are going to be just Mark Dara tweets. When he was kind of giving a spiel about all of his work that he did at BioWare, one thing he mentioned that when, before even Trespasser was released, they actually were... They had a team working on Dragon Age 4. It sounded like it was just a small team, but they at least were pitching some ideas. And there was a couple other dev tweets about, like, the Dragon Age 4 is definitely going to have a new protagonist. And when September came out with Trespasser, that was a really major thing they wanted to push on. And that's why the Inquisitor had their hand taken away. That was what made them the protagonists of that game. So if anything from 2015, what we can definitely say is that they are working on it. And there's going to be a new protagonist. And Solus is going to be the next villain. And that's pretty much all that happened that year.
Yeah, so as we said, kind of 2015 going into 2016, we weren't really in the community much, but we did have a few tiny things that went on. Of course, in January, lead writer David Gaider left BioWare after 17 years. However, there were plenty of notes that were left for the future of Dragon Age going forward, as Patrick Weeks would then take on the role as lead writer of the franchise. And then in a Twitter poll, we had once more another tease from Mark Dara asking us if fans would like to see a Dragon Age Tactics game. The majority vote for this was yes, and it would be assuming that this would be a different project, not correlating to a Dragon Age 4. It would be something on the side. And the final news bit of 2016 was the fact that Mark Dara gave us a really ominous look at this art book that had a rook and a wolf's head inflamed with the tweet, "Oh sorry, what's this?" And we've still been shaking our head at what this could be. It could refer to what would become Project Joplin. It could be in the final project for Dragon Age 4 that we now know is Morrison, but honestly, we still don't know what this is. It could just be another Dara tease, as he just loves to tease us with so many tidbits on Dragon Age.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to interrupt there. So those first 2 years, you said there's not a lot of news, but it is interesting that the series took the step with Trespasser to really set the stage. I can't think of a lot of games that do that nowadays for what the next game iteration will be, for what Dragon Age 4 will be. It seems very unlikely that it's not going to be in Tevinter, that Solus is not going to be the villain, and there's not going to be a new protagonist.
Yeah.
Is there anything, do either of you think, from those initial few years where they really set the stage, that maybe is no longer in the mix as much? Or are those pretty much cemented?
I at least think those three things are definitely in the mix.
Yeah.
Jack just mentioned the tweet about Mark Dara asking if we wanted a tactics game or
Yeah.
not. I as much as I would love that, because that's totally my shit, I just don't. I think that's gone almost, because I think they really are just focusing on Dragon Age 4 at the moment. Maybe they'll pull it out of nowhere. But I think everything they set up in Trespasser, they're really going to try to keep on, because if nothing else, it would just be a whole bunch of fans missing, but why did you change it? You know, like I think they're kind of stuck with that now. There have been a lot of, Jack, I don't know if you've heard this or not, but people wanting like a dual protagonist role, because especially people who romance Solus, they feel like their Inquisitor story's not done. Or people who romance Dorian's like, well, you know, I want to marry Dorian. Right?
I want to Skype call Dorian.
Me.
No, I actually created my own video on the dual protagonist idea and how it could actually work in a way that wouldn't be too intrusive, where you would play 25% as the Inquisitor and then you would play 75% as the new protagonist. But that was because of Mass Effect Andromeda and what that did with its own. It did do a dual protagonist in some aspect where you could play as your twin for a mission towards the end. And I was thinking of BioWare do like to innovate on the Frostbite engine. They want to up their gameplay. They want to change things. And I think that would be a natural progression for Dragon Age 4 with updating the Frostbite engine.
Well, that duality that you mentioned, that you could play as your twin in a particular mission, in terms of actual gameplay mechanics, they really push the idea in Andromeda, like we said, that you can play any sort of original playstyle from the previous iterations of the game that were locked off. So even if they're now, like you said, they want to iterate, they want things to be as best as they can to evolve, maybe the folks working on Dragon Age will take that same gameplay philosophy in Andromeda and apply it to story. Because I would love, I know it's a bit of a pull, but having a really well done and comprehensive story that will allow me to switch protagonists on the fly, almost like, if I may, Grand Theft Auto 5.
Yes,
This world is already so built up. I would love to have that opportunity.
You could probably, depending on how you do it, that might also solve a lot of problems, like who do I romance? Well, you got 3 characters to romance people with. So, surely you have 3 characters you want to romance, right?
Do either of you remember this time now, about 3 to 4 years ago, with what you were thinking and feeling about Dragon Age at that time? Because I think both of you mentioned that's kind of the point when both of you really jumped in and said, you know, I'm really going to focus and try to work hard at talking and learning about Dragon Age. You remember like what you were thinking, what you were hoping for the game at that point?
Yeah, to be honest, probably the first thing was I hope this is coming soon, and it's been 5 years, so I mean, we probably have another 2 to go. So I didn't think I'd be in my 30s when Dragon Age 4 came out, but here we are.
Yeah, I feel you there.
Yeah. So I guess one thing that what I really wanted out of Dragon Age 4 was really just closure, because I guess I was worried that, like, would there be a Dragon Age 5? I don't know. And one thing I don't think it was necessarily bad. It bothers me because I just want it like now, because I want to know what happens. So I would almost want Dragon Age 4 to like feel like a closure, like Dragon Age Origins did. Like when you finish Dragon Age Origins, like at least I felt like, yeah, okay, all right, I feel comfortable letting this go. Where, you know, Trespasser put that little seed in my head and like, what's going to happen next? And that's just been me for the past 5 years.
Yeah. So. For me, I think it was obviously all that stuff about closure and, you know, having Solus as the next villain, but also just experiencing a different Dragon Age and seeing Tevinter Imperium and just all those possibilities of griffins and all these things that we've heard about that linger on in the future for Dragon Age 4. And it was the aspects of the different gameplay, different mechanics, and how different Dragon Age will be from its previous ones with next-gen title, Frostbite engine, how they would then go from creating Mass Effect Andromeda, Dragon Age Inquisition with the knowledge of and the know-how of how the Frostbite engine works and how they can upgrade it, and then seeing what they could do with Dragon Age 4, and then just going to Tevinter, going to a new location, because obviously we know all about the South and we know about Ferelden and all there because we've been in them, you know, in Dragon Age Origins. We've spent plenty of time in Ferelden particularly, whereas Tevinter is just this completely dark, enigmatic place where we've never visited. We've only got hints, and we haven't even seen that many locations, bar the comics where we actually get to see a few cities, but it's completely enigmatic. And just the sense you get is it's going to draw real dark fantasy notions. And that's something that I've always, since 2016, wanted to see and wanted to grasp. So that's what I was looking forward to when.
Very exciting. All right, so let's get back on track. We're at 2017 now. We now know there is some information about Solus, a new protagonist, to Winter, which we're all excited about. David Gator's gone.
Yeah.
They were thinking about a tactics game. Jesus Christ, I don't know if that'll still be there. And we have this damn wolf's head on fire. All right. That's the stage, 2017. Take us away.
So we're actually going to start off with that, what I like to call the Wolf Rook book, because it rhymes. And because at the very beginning, well, it's more like late January, Mark Durrett actually shows us some of the inside of what the book is. A lot of people would question, now, if you remember, there is a Dragon Age Inquisition art book, and the things in the art book are not in this book. So people were wondering, is this just, minus one image of the Ghildirthalen tarot cards. But was this concept art that was never used? Is this new concept art for Dragon Age 4? And then also just, into the future right now, like, is this book even relevant? Because as we're going to get to later, the development of the game was restarted. So, like, is this still relevant or not? We don't actually know.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. In which, in the video edit, there will be images of all this, so you can see what I'm talking about. And then we move to February, and here's kind of where we get a small little storyline that is going to be concluded in a couple of quote unquote years from now. Alexis Kennedy is hired as a contract writer, and what he's actually working on, I forgot what year he actually tweeted it, so I don't know if I want to say it now or if this is going to come.
Yeah, it was 2018. He tweeted it. Yeah.
Okay. I'll let you explain what.
I can explain that.
Because in 2017, he just announced that he was doing something.
Yeah.
So anyway, there are a couple things happen. It's mostly just some vague tweets, whatever. But the major thing that happened was in October when Mike Laidlaw left BioWare after working there for 14 years. The reason why he left was never actually stated by Mike Laidlaw, and I think because of that. Yeah. Everything else we've heard is speculation. There have been speculations talking about he left because of what I'm about to talk about is when, roughly in October 2017, we don't have a hard date on it, is when Joplin, which was the code name for what was the first iteration of Dragon Age 4, was canned and then rebooted into what will now be known as Morrison, which is whatever game we're probably going to get unless they reboot it again. Out of I think it was the Kotaku articles is where all these quotes are from, right, Jack?
Yeah, they're all from the Kotaku article, which was released in 2019, but it was just, this was at the time of it all going down, everything hitting the fan, and Joplin just being canned completely.
Mm-hmm. So some of the quotes of what Joplin was going to be is, the initial concept of Joplin was played as a group of spies in Tevinter with large chunks of the narrative centered on heists. The goal was to focus as much as possible on choice and consequences. There was a huge emphasis on this hugely reactive game, smaller in scope than Inquisition, but larger in player choice, followers' reactivity, and depth. The developers who were the sources for this article say it was very ambitious, and many of the developers are actually really excited to work on the project. But all of this was canned because they wanted to rework live service elements into it. The new Morrison is supposed to add live service elements, is supposed to have some elements of Joplin, but we don't actually know what because it hasn't been said. And is supposedly being built on Anthem's code base, as this will save time. Now, code base, it's just like the basic code, not that this is going to be Anthem with dragons, even though some people at BioWare did say that it's just going to be Anthem with dragons. But at least, even in the Kotaku article itself, they criticize that, saying, well, some people who weren't really in the know is what they said that. And then there's other people who worked more closely on the project where they said, no, it's not Anthem with dragons, we're just using the code base. So there's even been some kind of differences of opinions in BioWare themselves, at least according to the Kotaku article. So, yeah.
I actually see that as a good thing because it means that BioWare don't need to start from scratch. So obviously the main takeaway, Anthem's code base, it does scream live service, oh no, what's happening with Dragon Age 4. But for Dragon Age Inquisition, Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, BioWare started from scratch. They didn't have a preset of the Frostbite engine, and that's why Andromeda didn't have the same mechanics as Inquisition. Like a lot of the main stuff, I can't pick anyone's out right now, but it didn't have a lot of the same mechanics that you would have thought, wait, Inquisition had that mechanic, why doesn't Andromeda have that mechanic? Whereas now, Dragon Age 4 is going to be built on that preset of the Frostbite engine, so it's going to save them way more time. They're going to be able to have a lot of similar mechanics built from previous games, and they're going to be able to just get ahead on Morrison. So it's actually a good thing, because we know that BioWare's biggest issue has been the Frostbite engine, and it seems that they have resolved that by starting again on Anthem's codebase. So I do see that as a good thing.
Which, in the article itself, Jason Schreier cited some ideas that the dev team had of what something on Anthem's code base would look at.
Yeah.
And as a quote, he heard some ideas for Morrison's multiplayer included companions that can be controlled by multiplayers via drop-in, drop-out co-op, similar to the old-school BioWare RPGs like Boulder Gates, and quests that could change based on not just one player's decisions, but on the choices of players across the globe, which is throwing it out there. That sounds like a nightmare to me. But not the drop-in, drop-out, but the fact that I can't control my own world is like the neuroticism's nightmare, and that's pretty much what happened or at least supposedly what happened in 2017. Granted, BioWare has never confirmed this. Again, they haven't actually denied it either, and I actually trust the Schreier articles a lot.
Yeah, he's done a few of these big investigations. He did the same thing when Mass Effect, when they announced they're not going to be making any more of those, and they're not going to do any more iterative stuff on Andromeda. This is something I have been wanting to speak with both of you about for a while, because I think it is a hugely important piece of information.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When I think about the initial concepts of Joplin, of what they're referring to here, of playing as a group of spies with narratives centered on heists, it sounds like the game I've been hoping for since I was 12 years old. There are not a lot of games that really effectively let you be a spy, for one, and then two, allow you to extend that with a strong narrative and use mechanics that are completely new to do heists is everything I'm all about. I think it would work so well in this world. I think it is an inspired choice. From the information that you just said there, Caitie, do you believe that initial concept with now Morrison is not going to be included? Will it be a part of it at all? What is your take from the information that you're able to glean?
I would say that I think it's likely they keep it. And I will say, because David Gator did eventually leave, and now Patrick Weeks is now the writer, he actually wrote a series of novels. I think the trilogy is called the Rogues Trilogy. Jack, do you remember what it's called? The Rogues Trilogy?
Patrick Weeks is... the one about the monster underwater?
No, that's Feeder. He wrote a trilogy of fantasy heist books. So this is, if anyone's going to do it, it might as well be the guy who's already written a bunch of novels about fantasy heist books.
This is his thing, yeah.
So I feel like, if anything, this is something that Weeks has at least has dabbled in a lot, and if anything, I think has a soft spot for. And I feel like they probably already have a lot of work on this heist thing, so they'd want to do it. I think the big hamp is going to be, though, can they get it to work with the Anthem code base? And the live service element, which sounds like drop-in, drop-out co-op, maybe some player decisions across the globe. We're not quite sure what... It might even be something we haven't even thought of. So... Yeah, I guess that's where I'm coming from.
So the novels are The Palace Job, The Prophecy Con, and The Paladin Caper.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, the Rogues of the Republic series.
That's it. Okay.
So it does very much sound, if not like a spiritual form, a contemporary of these sort of ideas, then if not directly, things that could relate very well to the Dragon Age world. This idea of live service elements, have either of you really jumped into Anthem at all?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I have.
So what?
Sorry, the differences of...
Yes, I did as well, and I found myself really loving and appreciating so much of the world building that went into this auspicious new idea that was inside Anthem. Like, truly BioWare has, and I think probably always will, some of the best minds when it comes to creating these universes in video games. The idea of having a jump in, jump out co-op pilots with you, for me, anytime that I experienced the game, really hampered my experience of this story that I thought was great. I had to play the game in spite of I wanted the story, and I played the game in spite of it. Is really where I find myself. So this idea of, and I think there's many people that experience that same sort of way of experiencing the game. Where do both of you see live service elements in a new Dragon Age? Because it likely will have to be. It's their business model at BioWare and through the publisher of EA. It's a part of almost all the games that they develop. Where do you see that working, and are you worried about it?
Jack, I'll let you go.
Yeah. It's a tough one because I like playing online games, and I'm a fan of that. I played Red Dead Online. I play Fallout 76, believe it or not. And I love playing games with my friends and hopping into that and getting on that adventure with as many people as possible. And I love that. But for Dragon Age particularly, I play it because it's single player, my choice, my characters. That being said, if I did have someone who would jump in and could play as one of my companions, that to me would be fine. I wouldn't mind that. I think that would be all right. I think it could be fun. It'd be bearable. In terms of live service, what we know is previously they put it in the multiplayer mode. They just all, you got your microtransactions in the chests, in the loot, in whatever you want to get in the multiplayer mode. If that was brought into the single player, would it be stuff like the cosmetic store where, you want to get a different dye, you want to dye plaid weave, you want to get a different armor, you have to then, you get a currency in the game and you have to buy that to then get it, or you have to grind the game? Is it going to be something like that? Or is it going to be something where you have, like an Assassin's Creed? This is my ideal. Anyone played Assassin's Creed Odyssey?
Yeah, loved it.
Yeah, I love that.
Phenomenal.
That's a live
Incredible
service game.
game.
In my opinion. You have your base game, you pay for the base game, but if you want the season pass, you get constant updates, you get live events, and then, every week there's a different loot, there's a different ship to destroy, there's something different every week to keep that live service element going, and then you can pay for those chunky DLCs. In my opinion, Dragon Age 4 were to just be a base game, and then it were to have added content that you would pay for afterwards, or that you could get cosmetics, or you could have a store. That would be absolutely fine in my opinion. We know it's going to happen, and I think that's the least impactful way where it's going to, completely be a multiplayer game or have a massive effect on the actual single player experience.
I don't play that many games other than farming sims and Dragon Age, so I have a weird mix of likes in the moment. So I haven't really played Dragon Age, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and so I don't really know that experience. But at least for me, I don't mind what they talked about, the drop in, drop out co-op. That's fine. What I think I would not like, though, is the cosmetic stuff in single player, because a huge part of I guess at least the PC Dragon Age community is modding. If you can't mod Anthem, you're gonna probably get blocked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the Dragon Age Inquisition modding community is actually still going strong 5 years after the game. They just unlocked adding in new models into the Inquisition code base or whatever, and that's has been a huge update, and there's so many people working on it still. And 5 years, that's crazy. The only other game that I can think of that has modded that long is Skyrim.
Yeah, Skyrim.
Yeah, Fallout, like the Bethesda games. Yeah.
But the Dragon Age modding community is actually going on really strong, and I feel like if you have any sort of live service to your single player, that's going to kind of break that and actually start banning a lot of people just because they're trying to do what they did last time. And let's be honest, past Dragon Age cosmetics hasn't always been the prettiest, There's a lot, while it's not necessarily my cup of tea, there's a lot of people that like adding these super intricate hairstyles and whatnot to their Dragon Age, and I think a lot of that would be turned off if they can't actually get that and would rather have to buy it, because a lot of them like making that. So I guess for me personally, kind of coming from the community aspect, I think it would be a real loss if you start adding in these single player cosmetics, because maybe they'll get their money, but I think you lose a real big part of the community.
Yeah, you do.
I think likely what will happen, if kind of looking at this from the outside, is the enmeshment of the idea of a single player multiplayer game. We've seen what EA and BioWare and other subsidiaries of EA want to do with these experiences where everything is live. It's always about interactivity. It's always about having these live service elements. And I think that is kind of the promised land for the people behind who's fitting the bill for Dragon Age. They want it to be not a single player, not a multiplayer, everything working together. And ostensibly that doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing. there is a positive way if you can kind of partition things in different places. But I am very reticent of allowing these sort of elements to dictate the tone or tenor of a game that is so based on your own individual pacing and understanding of the story.
Yeah,
if we allow that to be up to like an algorithmic good, I could feel that we may lose the one thing that everyone really, really loves about Dragon Age and Mass Effect is that these games can feel so personal. So that is my biggest worry. But I don't know, you both had some pretty good ideas of how this will actually go. So, you know, they're definitely not stupid, the people that are developed. They're some of the smartest people in you know, the industry. So I think the conversations we are having must have been replicated hundreds of times by the development teams.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And even Casey Hudson has came out and said, no, we want to do something else. And it's just trying to maintain that crowd who do not want that, you know, and hopefully, you know, they've had those conversations.
And people are very vocal, like very vocal about like what they didn't like in Anthem, what they don't want in Dragon Age 4. So it's not like they don't know this. I think it really just comes down to like games need to make money. That's just the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
How can they make money and make you know their investors happy and how they make us happy? And it's going to be hard writing that line. So like I know there's a lot of people angry at BioWare for what they're doing. I'm not angry because like they're in in between a rock and a hard place. You know, I get it. So I'll accept like whatever they do. There's probably going to be some element I like. There's just going to be some elements I'm disappointed into. Yeah, that's just what it is.
This is how it goes.
Are we as a collective here? Are we betting that there will be live service elements kind of 100% guaranteed in Dragon Age 4?
Yeah. Oh, I would find it bizarre there were no live service elements.
They were in Inquisition, though. You know, the multiplayer mode was filled with microtransactions, so they've already started it. And it all goes back to Mass Effect 3 when they, put the loot boxes in there. So BioWare are already in that boat, unfortunately. So that Dragon Age 4 definitely will be in some capacity. It just depends how much that will be, you know?
Well, unless Dragon Age gets bought out by another company. Like
yes,
EA's going to do.
That could all change. You're right. We've seen. Well, this is an example that you just brought up a couple of years ago. Everything changed. So everything we're talking about now could have no place in any sort of conversation. But I want to pin you both down because you have such a breadth of knowledge in this. If you had to, if you were taking a bet, how do you bet the live service elements will be implemented? Not your hope, but what you think will actually happen in Dragon Age 4. I can do mine first if you want, because since I proposed, I'll give you guys a second to think. If I was a betting man, I would say that it is what I mentioned before, where they blur. I think it'll be ambitious, and they'll blur the line between single player and multiplayer. They will have the player drop-in co-op, where you could, they would be maybe Fenris or something like that, depending on who the NPCs are. And I think they wouldn't have a collective decision being made by everyone, but I do think there would be, extra elements that if you get a full party, maybe you get access to something special. I think that'll be the line that'll blur. That's my bet.
I think adding on to that, because I agree with you for the most part, is also like kind of what you were talking about with Odyssey, adding in some events that you can only do with a party of multiplayer people. I will say I don't know. I almost want to bet they're not going to do cosmetics unless you can use your player character to play with each other, so you're all playing a spy that you made. Because otherwise, what's the point of cosmetics?
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, I like that idea. That actually sounds kind of inspired.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be fun to be like, oh, check out how cool my PC is. Oh, mine has a better face.
You're like a spy, if you really are a spy, having different cosmetic costumes is like real par for the course for spy shit.
Yeah.
But if they're not going to have anything like that, then I don't know what what would be the point.
I
you can't brag about your cosmetics. What's the point? Sorry, go on, Jack.
Sorry. I see it as literally the same, where you have your single player modes, but then you have those multiplayer missions, like on your war table, like that they did with Mass Effect Andromeda, where you had your Apex people, and then you would send them out. So instead of sending them out, like in your war table, you would then go into the multiplayer. And that's where you would then get your cosmetics, be your spy, and do that mission with your friends in the multiplayer. So you can be in your single player mode, but then you go to your war table or whatever they have, and that's how you can then activate into your multiplayer with your friends.
See, that I can dig, because then there could be like multiple updates, and like unlike maybe because that was sort of the plot of the multiplayer in Inquisition.
Yeah,
it
it was.
Didn't quite pan
just
out
didn't.
that way.
It didn't kind of.
But like maybe they could also update it with like little mini cutscenes, and so it's like little mini actually story missions. So if they do that, like I don't know, I think that could be something positive.
And like they had voiceovers in Inquisition where you had, we're going to go to Orlais to do this, and so you can add more narrative into it, and you can actually have more dungeon raids or have a cool narrative, fight dragons again, and make it more towards the narrative.
These are some great ideas. All right, BioWare, we'll talk. Okay, so let's get back in play. So this was an explosion in the development of Dragon Age 4 in 2017. Now let's start at 2018. They're picking up the pieces, or at least that's when we knew that this happened. It could have happened beforehand. It's hard to know exactly. But 2018, where are we? Let's keep following the news.
So 2018, somewhere between the end of 2017 and 2018, Project Morrison, we don't exactly have a time frame, but we know that the beginning of 2018, Project Morrison was in its very early pre-production stages. It was called a skeleton team at the time, and they were working on the very foundations of what this Dragon Age game could be. This was around the time that me and Caitie were also around the area, in the community, so we started to pick up upon a lot more things. So January, we have Alexis Kennedy just tweeting about vague Dragon Age stuff. Again, we'll get to him later on, but basically he's tweeting out that he didn't confirm Dragon Age 4, but he kind of did confirm Dragon Age 4. He's working on the game, and we'll get to him in a second. But we have, in January is when the bulk of the news comes out, with Kotaku basically saying that BioWare is doubling down on Anthem, and they pull all of the team out to then work on Anthem, and even Mark Darrow was pulled out to work on Anthem as opposed to Dragon Age. And we go on to basically them saying that they have live service elements. Casey Hudson then pulls out this tweet saying, regarding lots of feedback for Dragon Age, I think he'll be relieved to see what the team is working on, story and character focused, too early to talk details, but when we talk about live, it just means designing a game for continued storytelling after the main story. So of course we've got more of that live service. He's trying to calm the folks down by just saying that it's going to be all right, guys.
If there's one thing to remember about the Dragon Age community, everyone's scared and paranoid. Just keep that in mind.
And this was around the time that Anthem was starting to hype up its social media, so again, we didn't hear much. But Fernando Melo did say that every Dragon Age game to date has had some element of live service to it, whatever that means. So it's nothing to completely fear about. Yes, it's going to happen. It's inevitable, but every Dragon Age game's had it. So then we come to April, where BioWare announces that its store is closing, and again, fans completely just lost it, but they just closed their store just temporarily, just to stop selling their goods. Dara tweets about the history of BioWare, includes that Dragon Age 4 is being worked on, and that he is now the executive producer. He's always been the executive producer of Dragon Age 4. Again, just a few tweets around this time. And we have Alexis Kennedy teasing for Dragon Age 4 that he's been writing something about big old gothic factions and death. Now, Alexis Kennedy is normally brought on to the writing team because apparently in real life he has a very personal experience with death. I think his dad, his mum and his sister have died. So he's very good at, using that real life stuff to then actually write and get into the depths of what death means, departure, and what it's actually like to, experience that. So we know that he was working on that for Dragon Age 4. Something about a big old gothic faction. We can speculate on what that could mean, but he was writing some pretty dark fantasy storytelling for Dragon Age 4, is what we can speculate.
I'd like to interject with, I think it's the Mortalitaci and not Tevinter Imperium. Thank you for coming.
I completely agree. We had around E3, again, Dragon Age fans thinking that, we're going to see Dragon Age 4. It's been a while. We're wondering where Dragon Age is going to be. And we hear that in a Game Informer interview, Mark Darrow confirms that Dragon Age 4 is going swell. Now, at the time, we didn't know about Joplin. We didn't know about Morrison. We didn't know what was going on. But now that we know that Morrison had literally just started its development very early stages in 2018, the fact that Mark Darrow in June was saying it's going swell, it's probably very, very early in development. So there really wasn't that much going on for Dragon Age 4. This point, the entire team was shuffled on to getting out Anthem at a good point and cracking on with it. So really, Dragon Age 4 was nothing at this point. We have Hardened Hightown was released, and we got more references to the Executors. Executors? How do we say it? Caitie?
Executors, like business executors.
And this is where we had IGN Greece publishing an article saying that voiceover was in the work and that Dragon Age 4 would be released 2 years later on. Now, Caitie actually had the author of this article reach out, saying that an anonymous source who worked as a voice actor for BioWare has confirmed that the voice acting has been completed for a future game of the company. When asked if the game was Anthem or a new Mass Effect, the answer we got is that the new game belongs in a renowned series that takes place in a medieval setting. So
to quickly interject, like what happened here, it's like I think it was like in 2019 I released a video of like other Dragon Age new stuff, and I mentioned that this article came out, and I'm like, this article came out saying 2 years time, which in 2018, so it would be come out in 2020, which is this year. So I just raised a lot of doubts, like, would this conflict with the Schreier articles we know? I don't think this. I don't really believe this article. So the author came out and was like, look, girl, hold on. I'm like, okay, that's okay, I feel awkward, but at the same time I still don't believe the voice actor you talked to. Yeah. Maybe it's someone reputable and maybe their work is done, but like I don't, like, the game's not coming out this year.
I doubt that anyone who is a VO actor will know like conclusively when a game is going to be released if they're just doing work for it. I doubt that's something they would share with every person that's, you know, a random townsfolk in Thedas or something like that, you know?
Yeah. So I probably the one thing to get from this is that BioWare hired someone, because the original article was in Greek. I had to Google translate it. So they hired someone who probably speaks Greek and is Greek. And so there maybe there's a couple of those. And around Odyssey came around this time. They also had a lot of Greek actors. So like the big speculation there is like, is Tevinter going to have a lot of like Greek inspiration from it? Mm-hmm. So that's probably what happened. And then, you know, you had some townsfolk saying, oh, it's going to be in 2 years' time.
Yeah. Which we know at the time we didn't really know. We could speculate on from Jason Schreier's articles, but we didn't know for sure. But basically now we do know that Dragon Age 4 will not be coming out in 2020.
Yeah.
God, what if though?
Yeah.
I know. What if
they haven't denied it? It's just very unlikely.
And then moving on, we had VG247 basically covering an article that said Dragon Age and Mass Effect will likely be influenced by Anthem. And we didn't really know what it meant. I believe that this could have just been the code base. You know, the fact that Dragon Age 4 would be built on the code base. But it was more talking about how BioWare are going into that live service element and how they're pushing that ahead. And then Dara tweets out that they are working on a Dragon Age game, which at the time was, honestly, just the biggest confirmation that we had that Dara was working on a Dragon Age game, that Dragon Age was not dead, and that there was another game coming out. And then based on the reactions above, Hudson tweets out that both games would be designed from the ground up and based on what these games should be. Now, we also had Mark Dara basically at PAX West confirming that Dragon Age 4 would be in the works, and the Triforce Quartet actually came out and played Dragon Age Inquisition's main theme. So that was just confirming, again, that Dragon Age 4's existence is in the world, and that was at a PAX West booth. We had John Epler and Patrick Weeks tweet out something very ominous about the Titans' future. Very ominous, a good little plot tidbit that basically, apparently the Titans are not these evil, threatening beings, and they're very friendly and would be lovely to talk to in the next game.
Just to interject there, I love what both of you have done, just exploring that real subplot that was only kind of mentioned in, I think, the DLCs of Inquisition, and finding the hidden stories there in terms of where the story is going and, you know, what is the most interesting things in Dragon Age. That sort of stuff for me is like right at the top of the list.
Yeah, that is as well. Definitely going forward to be huge. And that's just from a DLC. Yeah, that's just a tiny little tidbit that was on the side, and it's actually going to completely change Dragon Age 4 going forward if we look at the lore. But there's going to be a future of them. So hopefully everyone can get on board and liking them.
Anyway, continue. You're in November, I believe. So just to
now
point
we're in
out,
November.
It's very interesting because at this point in time, we're in November in 2018, I believe. Anthem has yet to been released.
Yeah,
but there's still so much fear that nobody wants that Anthem stink on anything that has to do with Dragon Age. Any mention of it at that point is just not even there. So it is fascinating to see that retrospectively.
To talk about like to people who like don't know much about like the history and are coming in maybe as new fans or whatever, it's not that people didn't think Anthem would do well, even though it didn't. They didn't want a multiplayer game, and that's really what it was. People did not want a Dragon Age multiplayer. And then as soon as like the Anthem beta came out, I actually forget. I think that might have been December. Jack, do you remember in the beta?
I know you played it early, didn't you?
Yeah, I did, but I don't.
Yeah,
remember
December. You know what? Ironically, December 8th. So it was actually the day after we got some pretty auspicious news that we're about to get to. Yeah,
there you go.
So it is funny that like as soon as they said, "Hey, look, there's some Dragon Age." Oh, by the way, remember Anthem's still there.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And that's why all the news was just at the time, Mark Darrah confirms Dragon Age is in the works, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's amazing." When honestly, he's just saying that they're working on the game, but it's because we just didn't want Anthem. There was this large fear that we don't want to see this, BioWare go down this path of live service and multiplayer, and that's why the Dragon Age news is so Dragon Age 4 is in the works. We are going to be saved inevitably in the future. And then we get to November. Now this is around the time when we get excited because BioWare released a blog that says a few things about Anthem, but of course we only care about the secret Dragon Age stuff that they mention and that we should look ahead for December. And now we get to December where we had, first of all, a Venture Beat article. This would have been it wouldn't have not been the first Dragon Age 4 Day, no. There's a community thing called Dragon Age 4 Day, but of course it only existed in 2019, so this is before its time.
No, it was 2018.
Was it 2018?
That was the first one.
Yeah, sorry. So the first Dragon Age 4 Day, we did have a Venture Beat article that actually came out saying that there was a mysterious source claimed that the next Dragon Age would be 3 years away, around 2022. And the real reason why Mike Laidlaw left was because in 2017, the game had been trashed in favour of a live service business model. Fans were very sceptical, but this would later be echoed again in the Schreier articles. So apparently the real reason Laidlaw left was because the game was trashed for live service, which is basically true.
Yeah, I to quickly talk about the Venture Beat article, I want to give it credit because it really was the first source we ever heard that like that was the thing that was happening.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of like errors in the article, so people really didn't want to believe it. So I almost feel bad for them.
I didn't believe it. No, I
didn't either.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm not covering this.
Like if they just edited a little better, we might have thought something. So like shout out to that. Sorry, we didn't believe you.
We're sorry, but yeah, it seemed to speak the truth.
No, they were right. I mean. Anyway, the big one.
The big one. So at the time,
just to set the scene as well. So this is what is the actual day that this thing comes out?
December 6th.
Okay, so
December 6th.
it's so fascinating because you think before this point in time, we have seen nothing that has to do with Dragon. I don't even think there was like a confirmation little video being like it exists or anything like that before this.
Yeah, there wasn't. No,
and
nothing.
There's so much. I remember that year there was so much antipathy and worry that the game is completely trashed, and that was before we saw anything to do with anything about it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And it was just fan fears and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah. Anyways, continue. Sorry about that, Jack.
But there was it's all good. There was like everyone and their mother did not expect anything Dragon Age at the Game Awards. Other than that article that I touched upon, I was like, okay, yeah, it sounds like we're going to see some. Because Casey Hudson came out and said, look out for the secret Dragon Age stuff. And where's a better time than the Game Awards? So there was a little bit of hype in the community, but a lot of people were like, nah. But we did see the Dread Wolf Rises teaser, and honestly, we all lost our shit.
Oh, yeah.
The community went crazy, because of course, this game that we've been thinking about, talking about, making videos about, actually exists. And it's hitting on the marks that we want. It's Solas, it's the Dread Wolf, it's ominous murals, and it's Red Lyrium, and it's crazy shit that we all want for a Dragon Age game. The first glimpse of what we can tell is, it's not a multiplayer live service game. It's talking about Solas, it's talking about that future plot, it's hitting on these future beats that we want. So the first tease that we got was everything that we all wanted to see for what a potential tease, what it could have been. And yeah, we all lost our shit. And we all spent countless hours making breakdowns on what we saw, still, trying to gather our thoughts. But we also got a few other little tidbits on the side. John Epler, who is the narrative director for Dread Wolf Rises, as it's now known, says that he will actually give us a Dragon Age game that does right by us. So that should give, fans a little bit of hope that John Epler, the narrative director, he knows what he's doing. He knows what goes into Dragon Age. The Dragon Age website, a day later, updated. We found out that Previously, Mike Laidlaw was the creative director, but now Matthew Goldman, the previous art director on Dragon Age Inquisition, is the new creative director. So the creative vision for Dragon Age 4 is in good hands because it's the art director, and he knows what he's talking about. He knows how to build Thedas. And the TLDR on this website was basically Mark is very excited to show more, as we know, because he loves to tease and loves to kind of get in there. And Matthew states that this is the strongest team yet and that they are venturing forth on the most epic quest ever.
Wow.
And
that's Jesus.
Yeah.
2018, one of the biggest years, I would say, so far of what we have seen in Dragon Age 4. There's many things I want to talk to you both about of what happened in that year. Let's start in descending order because you've just mentioned it, the trailer of what we got to see. Jack, I think you said it all right, like it hit all the notes that we wanted. There's a sense of finality, a collectivism of all those little moments from the previous games. Caitie, what was your experience? How did you feel about that?
So it was very. I was in a Discord with some people to watch the thing together, and we weren't expecting much, and so we're all just like chatting, and I was recording it just for funsies, and so like you can see me like I'm typing something mid sentence, and then the BioWare logo comes up again because we'd already see something for Anthem, and like everyone's flipping out. We're like, wait, what?
What is this?
So I guess that was my experience of just like wait, something's happening. So yeah, for me, I will say like I think it hit everything we wanted because it was completely story-based. I wouldn't say it necessarily means that, like, it's definitely single-player, it's not multiplayer, stuff like that. But, like, when I did, like, a 1-hour breakdown, I'm not even joking, about the trailer. And when I, like, at least looking at it real closely, one thing that I kind of decided is that they didn't really give us anything new. They just told us what parts that we already had that we need to look at. And I think that's kind of what the point of it was. It actually doesn't tell us anything at all about Dragon Age 4. It just was a collection of things we've already seen that may actually be there, like the Red Lyrium Idol or something the Red Lyrium Idol represents. So I almost think that like it's almost like a promise. Like this is something we are working on. We know these are the things that you're interested in. We're going to get to it because it didn't have a title, it didn't have a date, it didn't have anything, and I even think the audio from it is actually reused from Trespasser because it sounded a lot like the Trespasser dialogue. And we know there was a whole bunch cut out of Trespasser, so like I actually think it's I don't want to use the term reused a lot of assets because there were a lot of things that were new in it, but just like it I don't think it like confirmed anything other than Dragon Age 4 is being worked.
Like there was no new character models. You have no idea of what it's going to look like or any sense of that. It was basically just that same art style that was popularized in Inquisition with some new pieces of art. And I think you are correct that it is audio that is literally from the end of the previous game. If there's one thing, because you mentioned that it just deals with things we already know, if there is one or two things that you think this little glimpse will indicate will be in Dragon Age 4, because that's what this video is all about. That's what this is all about. Trying to figure out what Dragon Age 4 is going to be. What do you think was in there that's a pretty good indicator of what will be in Dragon Age 4?
So what I will say that I'm really bad because I forget the artist's name, but the artist, Jack, if you know who that is, shout it out.
Thornborough. Nick Thornborough.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, Nick Thornborough. He's the guy who did all of the murals in Inquisition and Trespasser. And I think it was Dara that said, like, this guy does really good work, and he draws exactly what he means. He means to put a lot of imagery in it. So when we actually analyzed the thing that I did for like an hour, it represented in each of the little aspects of the mural are actually the big threats of all three games. You got the Solus and maybe the Dreadwolf, if you want to add that into Inquisition. You have the little Red Lyrium idol from Dragon Age 2. And then in the little, I call it the tambourine, the little like half circles around the thing. If you actually count them, it's the same number of old gods, and as of old gods, there's still two around that represent the Blight still coming, which would be Dragon Age Origins. So it's the big threats of all three games, and now they're all combined into one image. So does that mean whatever threat we're going to encounter, which if that's the Dread Wolf, if you looked at the Dread Wolf in the actual image, it's covering everything. It's on top of everything. Does that mean the threat that we're going to be facing is bigger than all those three things combined? I don't know. And that's kind of what I took from it.
Ooh, Jack, what do you think?
I think Caitie's got a really good hot take there. I think just the Dread Wolf, like, being the biggest and baddest enemy or whatever so far, that it's going to encompass all of the previous narratives. I was really surprised to see the Red Lyrium Idol come back. Like, I was like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Took me completely by surprise to see that. That'd be the first thing in this trailer. And just to hit on those notes of the previous games is what I really like. Like, it feels like it's reflecting a lot of Dragon Age 2. And that's a game that people don't really, generally in the mainstream, people don't like. I know in the community, everyone loves it. But for it to hit on those notes, I really like that. So I think it's an ode to the previous games. But as Caitie says, I do think that this big bad is going to just encompass all of those villains or all of those, antagonistic plot lines together and just completely throw them out the water and be like, nah, this is the biggest threat that we've got.
Yeah. Which, to add on to that, you said you didn't think the Red Lyrium Idol would come back. Nobody did, because it explodes at the end of Dragon Age 2.
Yeah. And then we can get it in Inquisition as a sword. But it's like, okay, so it's a sword now. But then apparently there was a second one. Or I don't know, there's some,
Well, we all thought the sword that you get, which is kind of like, it's a cool sword model. You just want the cool sword model, It was just like a fun little thing. We didn't actually think it was real.
And if I recall, there was also the model for like a cosmetic DLC. I remember I had some Red Lyrium weapons and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's,
what's up with that?
It's definitely a vein, if you'll allow me, of whatever. Anyways, I wanted to go back to Alexis Kennedy, because I think both of you kind of perked up on that a little bit, if I'm saying the name correctly. So you mentioned before, it was very early on in the year that we just covered, that he is writing something about big old Gothic factions and death because of his familiarity to it. Those are some real dark fantasy themes that I think kind of make Dragon Age really, really special. I heard a little bit, I think, from you, Caitie, that you had a hypothesis of what that is and how that will be affecting Dragon Age 4. I'd love to hear more about that.
So when this news came out, everyone thought it would be Tevinter, because Tevinter's the big, scary black magic place, right? Well, so what he said was a faction that's focused on death, I believe was something along the lines of that. And the faction that's focused on death is the Navarra Mortalitasi, which is literally a group of mages that believe that when a person dies, their spirit goes into the Fade and displaces a spirit of the Fade. That would become a demon. So to make less demons in the world, they put that spirit into the dead person's body, and then they have literally a big city of the dead that they put all those dead bodies in so they can live and do whatever they want and not hurt people. And it's just mages that take care of that. What else would a big mage faction can focus on death be? It's not it's the Mortalitasi.
It's the Mortalitasi. Yeah.
So, and then I would also say in the, if I'm remembering correctly, in the Wolfrook book, they had like a lot of costume designs, and there were some that looked like kind of Navarran inspired. So that's also where I'm like, there's maybe something, and Navarra's right by Tevinter,
Yeah.
So if anything, I actually thought it was more that rather than Tevinter. So that was my theory on
Jack?
it.
I completely agree with the Mortalitasi. I think that's spot on. And again, just other silly ideas like the Last Moon cult, which is a cult that worships Lucican. But that's only because it's the worship of Lucican, who's the next old god to awake. But,
Well, it could be Razakil's the other one, I think. Yeah.
Razakil and Lucican are the two left. I think Lucican's the next to awake, or Razakil, I can't remember. But
I don't know if there's an order, but
Okay.
yeah, it's one of the two.
One of the
You
two.
got 50% chance. So.
But there's a cult in the D&D who basically go around the Grand Tourney and they just kill people and sacrifice them. That sounds
and the
pretty
Dragon Age tabletop.
Yeah, so it's pretty
So does it
pretty
seem
gruesome.
like maybe, because he's not, I'm not as familiar, but he's not coming in as lead writer or anything like that. Could this just be,
Just a guest.
yeah, this
So-
could
so
be a
in
subset of what he's doing.
In 2019, we're going to talk about Alexis
Yeah.
Kennedy a bit more.
Yeah.
There's a tiny bit more that goes to it, but
Yeah, that's... We're not... To people watching this, like, wasn't he accused of something? Yeah, well, we're doing it in order.
yeah,
doing it in order.
But there is something that we do need to touch upon with Alexis, but I think that he was just hired to write about this faction, and that's really about it. So obviously he's not talking about characters.
Could you
He's
imagine,
just
though,
writing
if it
stuff.
is the Mortalitasi, the city of death that you mentioned there,
Yes.
Caitie, and maybe if it is really exploring these themes of death, and maybe some of this is true, that we see and experience some of the old characters that have died based on our choices in the previous games, you know, like even we're talking about Dragon Age 2, that family member, the mom, people like that, like just to have those little moments, I think would be for me very, very impactful.
Well, that would be cool. I don't know if they would do that because it's that culture is strictly Navarran, and the only Navarran character we have would be Cassandra, and Cassandra hasn't died yet. So the only one I could see actually being there would be a Cassandra. But it maybe
Listen,
if there's some
it's
sort
all
of
magic. It doesn't matter.
It's
well,
magic.
like maybe they introduce new characters. Like,
Yeah.
what if it's your new PC's mother and family? What if they're there?
Yeah.
You know, like it could be a whole new characters we don't know yet, but we will have some sort of connection to. So.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
All right, I think we have squeezed 2018 dry. Now, 2019, things are picking up. We just left it where we saw the trailer. We got some news about different people that are working on it. They're confirming that it's happening. There's some kerfuffle about Anthem and the live elements of it. Now, take us to 2019.
All right, so the very first thing in January, so I will say, like, kind of during this time, this is when BioWare's all focused on Anthem, so there really wasn't that much.
Yeah.
But we did start seeing more things on LinkedIn because people know how to do that, of, like, trying to hire for more people specifically for Dragon Age, and the one was for a multiplayer team. So people are wondering, like, oh, is there going to be a multiplayer mode rather than that drop out type of thing, or is that what they mean and they just want to make it simple? So that was it for January. And in February, also not much because this is when Anthem came out. But one thing that did happen was my podcast co-host Jordan. He's really into the economics, so he actually pays attention to the EA investor calls. And one thing that he listened to was that EA was blaming Battlefield 5 for. He blamed the poor sales of Battlefield 5 on them pushing a single-player service rather than a battle royale that was really popular at the time. And what he was kind of worried about, and like hearing some of the things that they were actually saying, were just like EA really blames single player things for the downfall of the game, which you have to actually talk to people who played the game. It wasn't really so much the single player they hated. It was a couple other things. At least that's what I've heard. I have not played the game, but for people that I've heard that like have played the game, like their issue wasn't the single player. It was like, you know, some sort of, you know, other thing. So anyway, so that was kind of people wondering, like, okay, if single player doesn't do well, what are you doing there, EA? What's your business? So that's the whole thing. And then April comes out, and this is the big month because this is when the Schreier articles come out about like what's been happening behind the closed doors of Anthem and Dragon Age. So pretty much everything that we talked about in 2017 is in these articles, and this is the first time we know about it. And it's really a big thing, and I'm not gonna like go back on it because we already talked about it. Sorry, I got out of breath.
It's okay
because I'm pregnant. Baby just takes everything out of you. Anyway, but the one thing to add on to this is that BioWare did actually have a response. So as I think Schreier said, like he sent the article to them, like I'm going to be publishing this. Do you have any words? They didn't say anything, but. Minutes after the article came out, they did release their own blog about it, essentially condemning the article.
I remember that,
a lot of people, including people in BioWare, were very unhappy about it because it seemed very dismissive. Because one thing that the article did bring up was crunch time and how it was hurting the developers. Like people were talking about in BioWare, like they had to lock themselves in rooms just to cry because they were just so stressed. Like it was just a really bad situation over there, apparently. And this announcement from BioWare was kind of just condemning that and like, oh, you know, we're a big old family, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, so it angered a lot of people.
Yeah.
Later on, there would be a email sent around to everyone in BioWare where it was a little bit more sincere, like, look, we hear that you guys are stressed. We're here that crunch, you know, things are getting bad, and we want to do something about it, so we're going to have a couple of team meetings and try to restructure things a little bit. We don't know what came of that, but at least people at BioWare were hopeful. According to Schreier, at least, we're hopeful that this was a good sign and a good step forward.
And the idea, I guess the conceit was that this was the crunch more for Anthem, correct? Because that was,
it was with the release of Anthem, and then, you know, the other effect of it not being good, and it all came out after that. And I feel like
go ahead, Jack,
I feel like that the response, the statement, I feel like it wasn't written by BioWare. I feel like EA or management from EA wrote that. I don't think it was actually... That's my personal belief. That's speculation. But I do feel like that wasn't actually from BioWare itself. Just the way that the actual developers from BioWare were reacting to it.
Yeah.
It didn't even seem like...
Well, probably would be part of a PR team that doesn't have direct contact with the development side of things. It is something that I think maybe we take a moment just to talk about here. Like the idea that you work so exceptionally hard, spending countless hours that we couldn't even imagine to create these games that people like all of us adore and think are important. It's got to be concerning to feel like, in Anthem's case, you work that hard and you make those sacrifices and you end up with something that unfortunately doesn't have that sort of landing, and you're expected to keep working because it was a live service sort of game. So that crunch never really ended. I think maybe now, because they're a year out of development, maybe they're slowing down a bit. But still, I think it is something that, we should all be aware of. We love these games, but man, there is a price, isn't there?
There is. If in any regard, it probably got worse after Anthem, because of the patches and having to fix it and everything. In any regard, I feel the crunch would have got even more severe.
If anything, also, like, there's like I think this is another Schreier thing of like Anthem 2, where they have a big update to like make a lot of things better. Like, they're probably just poor things you're gonna have to do it all over again.
Yeah. Go back straight into it.
Yeah. So poor, which I will say we'll get to that later. Actually, never mind. That's later down the line.
Foreshadowing.
Going back to like the timeline. This isn't like super important to Dragon Age 4, but both Jack and I keep getting messages on it, so I just want to put it in here. Yeah. So around all this drama was the very first time it happened, but it's been happening ever since. GameStop and I think it's called Game in the UK.
Yeah,
Jack.
the UK Game. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they have a thing that they do is that if any game is like even hinted or announced, they will throw it up on their website for sale with the release date of whatever year it currently is if they don't have a website. So during this time, they had Dragon Age 4 for sale, for pre-sale on their website and with the release date of 2019, and everyone was like, "Oh, it's happening! It's gonna whatever." To which Mark Dara then tweeted like, "Hey, if anyone can get this, send it to us because we would love it."
I just love that. As opposed to no, he's like, "No, if you can get it, send it to me."
Yeah, I want to know how we fix some problems. So if you see it, what generally it looks like, it's a black cover with just white text of Dragon Age 4 on it. That ain't it. So I'm sorry. Do not pre-order it, by the way. It's not real. I just want to throw that out there because it comes up all the time. Anyway,
it does.
So we go into May, and now we're kind of cooling down from Anthem a little bit. People are, they're more focused on that, doing whatever. And here is where we get an announcement that the Dragon Age 4, or BioWare, whatever, is entering full production now. Now Dragon Age 4 is the main thing, and then everyone else is complaining that BioWare has abandoned Anthem when that's not the case, because now Anthem is being worked on in Austin, where Dragon Age is now in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. So the new BioWare merch also opens for Jinx. That's just so. It was closed. I think. What year was it? I think you said it was 17.
It was 20. Yeah, it was 17. Yeah, it closed for a fair bit. So yeah, 17.
Yeah, it wasn't the 2000s. We're good. Yeah, it was there.
Yeah, it was. It closed and then reopened. Apparently, the story there was that whoever was doing their merch did a couple things very badly. So we just need a new person. So that was a new thing. Around this time, Alex Wilton Reagan, I believe, AWR. She was the voice actor of the Inquisitor. Starts hinting about a lot of voice things. Some of them are for other games, some of them not. She's very hinty about what she's doing. But it kind of gets fans of speculation that maybe VO and in her case even mocap was in the work. Because we already at least heard in the IGN Greece that there was some VO work being done, allegedly, in BioWare. So maybe around this time, this is when people are starting to do voice work, mocap. We're not quite sure. So just throwing that one out there. So then in August 17th, Fernando Mello actually leaves BioWare. We mentioned him earlier, I think once, and he what he does. The actual title was kind of debated. So I'm not quite sure what to call him, but he was a senior producer who worked a lot on live service elements. Yeah. So he might have been done on his job. He said it was the least disruptive timing as it would likely get for him to leave. Is he doing something new now? I can't remember if he's doing it.
He has just announced that he's doing something else now, and I can't remember what it was, but he is finally now back into doing something else.
Yeah. So, you work for he was there for like 12 years, so you work for a place for 12 years. You want something fresh. I get it. But again, people are freaking out like, oh no, he's leaving. Really, anyone leaves at BioWare, people freak out. So yeah,
I took that as good news because he's he's done. He says that he's gone at least disruptive timing, and his actual role was to prove out the core concept of the game. So what he's saying is, guys, I've proved out the core concept of Dragon Age 4, and I've left. So I took that as it's a good thing.
Which in September, the Casey Hudson kind of like announces on the BioWare blog that. I think the exact words is, I can confirm indeed that Dread Wolf rises and that it's in pre-production. So at the very least, we're in pre-production. At least of September 2019. This is also when BioWare actually moves to a new office. So we're tweeting a lot about things like that. And there was they invited a whole bunch of news reporters from Edmonton to come and talk about fun stuff or whatever. And they had pictures around the office. And one of the pictures, there was a TV screen. I assume it was something animated, but we were only seeing a still image of it looked like Solus. And there's another one that looked like a dragon. And it wasn't anything we'd seen before. At the same time, it looked like it could have been an Inquisition. So people are wondering, is this new or is this just unused footage that we didn't have that they just brought out? Because why not?
It is, just to interject there, in Toronto where I'm located, there's Ubisoft Toronto, which is the big Ubisoft hub here. And they often will have events where they invite people over. And when you do walk through those studios and just those cubicles and see, what's on that screen? What's that little piece of art that people are working on? It's very, very tempting to look at everything and say, okay, I've discovered the secret.
There's going to be a dragon in Dragon.
That may be that, yeah. But it's amazing how, if you're a fan, that it feels like you're kind of in the inner sanctum, so to speak.
Yeah.
You're inside.
Yeah.
September also marks the day where we start getting a couple of people who work as animators at BioWare mentioning things about animating. I think this would happen on later on in either this or 2019 or 2020. I can't remember, but there was someone asking what do you want a dog to do?
Yeah.
So people were like, ooh, is there a dog companion? Ooh. Stuff like that. So, and then I guess the big thing that happened in September was September 20 is when Alexis Kennedy is accused of sexual harassment. And this, was a huge deal. Honestly, I really don't know much about the case. I don't want to say really anything about it because I really don't know. And I don't want to, that's over there. I don't really want to deal with it. But anyway, people were wondering, BioWare, you were saying you were working with Alexis Kennedy. What's the deal on that? And so Dara confirms that BioWare had worked with Kennedy on a previous incarnation of Dragon Age 4, but they no longer have a working relationship. So that's people wondering is because he was talking about being on the game after
the Joplin thing,
the reboot. Yeah. So people are wondering is it still in there? Is it not? What's going on? So we don't really know how much of his stuff is in there, but at least according to this, I would say almost none of it.
According to this, absolutely none of it. And what we know is that he was working on Joplin, we can say, from February to October. So all of his work would have just gone to Joplin. It may have transferred over, but the fact that they don't have a working relationship is pretty evident enough that...
So all that Mortalitasi stuff we talked about, out the window.
Maybe it's out the window, or maybe they just had someone else rewrite it.
Yeah, it also could be just initial plot point ideas, what's it called, story mapping conceits of world building, and then I know a lot of development that has to do with that. It's not exactly one person comes in and nowadays at least does it all. There's a lot of here is the implementation, now someone else will run with it.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, he could have just been gave the big outline and someone else wrote the words. So. Sorry, I have so much hiccups now. But yeah, anyways, that was something that I've been trying to allude to. We keep talking about Alexis Kennedy because this is a thing that happened, and I think it is good to address it. But I really would be surprised if his credits are in Dragon Age 4.
Me too.
So that's just something. Another little thing that happened, there was an Edmonton Expo, and they had a bunch of little cutouts of people, and they had a Solus cutout that, the model looked different. There's been a couple other times where, things will happen and the model looks different than what we had in Inquisition, so people are like, what's going on? But it's weird in that it doesn't necessarily look like a new model. It just looks like looks different.
He looks shocked.
Yeah, no, the Solus one looked like he was about to cry. It was very strange.
Yeah. It's very weird compared to the other ones. You got like a happy Morden, and then it's just Solus like, very sorrowful.
The villain. Yeah, it was kind of weird. So then we jump to October, and we have in October 29th, EA released the quarterly financial statements to investors, and a question about Dragon Age was actually asked. And to those who weren't there and those who listened to EA's head report, Dragon Age 4 won't be released until April 2020, is what they said. Or I think it was like the financial quarter 20, whatever the term is, but people are saying around that time. So, and then according to the earnings call, there are plans for not only Dragon Age 4, but other Dragon Age products too.
So this is the big news, I think, that we need to discuss in a little bit. Because, you know what? We're going to discuss it right now. Because those two pieces of information, usually when they have these financial calls, they are not necessarily even meant for the press, but the press often will sit in. It's literally just for the investors to see where the company is going. April 2022 and more Dragon Age games. Those words on a piece of paper, what does that conjure up for both of you?
The tactics game that we thought was dead.
Yeah, that's
now
what you're
come out.
See, I was thinking of getting more money. Like, we want that Dragon Age stuff. I hear EA's going to do more. Let's give them, more products. So I was thinking of from the investor standpoint.
I think me and Caitie both talked about they already have a Dragon Age app, so why create another one? Yeah, it could be the Dragon Age Keep. They could try and find some way a live service to keep. I don't know why they would want to do that, but they could do something like that. They could do a Dragon Age web app. They've done them in the past. They could do another one. They could do a spin-off game. Sorry, they could do the tactics game.
It does from the actual quote. It does sound like they're talking about a game when they're dealing with products as opposed to like a service. I think that's usually the corporate speak. If it's something that's ancillary to your core product line. So it does sound like they're maybe at least planning. Do you think that there'll be something released within that same year in conjunction even with the release of Dragon Age 4?
Good, yeah.
I am not even sure, to be honest, because at this point, we're just waiting for one game. I can't imagine waiting for two,
Yeah.
And other than "Do you want a Dragon Age Tactics game" was tweeted out once, like 4 years ago. At this point, we have nothing on it.
Yeah.
And as much as like everyone would like that idea, like I would be very excited if say, with Dragon Age 4, we also have this Dragon Age Tactics game. I would love that. At the same time, like I would be very surprised that came out of nowhere. I also think that I know they already have a Dragon Age mobile game, which apparently still turns a profit. By the way,
yeah.
I don't know. I also wonder if maybe because when I did a video on the Dragon Age mobile game not that long ago, and on the people who actually run it, who was a BioWare company but now is EA owned. I think it's EA Mobile. I forget what it is, but they are hinting at like they're working on something new. So is that another Dragon Age thing? I don't know. I know anytime like the Command and Conquer series, as soon as it was mobile, everyone was out. We're done.
Yeah.
So one thing I would say though, if we could have a Dragon Age tactic game that's full of terrible microtransactions, it's so to speak, if we can have Dragon Age Tactics crawl so Dragon Age 4 can run, okay, sure. I'll take a terrible microtransaction-filled tactics game if Dragon Age 4 is clear of it.
Let me paint a grisly scene for both of you now, though. So April 2022, we're in that area. We know a lot about Dragon Age 4. It's coming out. But then we realize that the division that happened early on in the development cycle of Dragon Age left a lot of core materials that BioWare and EA are not just going to throw away. Picture this. Dragon Age 4, it still has live elements. It's still going to be a single-player experience, but they've taken this idea of multiplayer and created a very own game with that will have some of the story included, telling another part of the story. So they're allowed to diversify and maybe use some of that Joplin stuff that fell off the radar that they weren't using now. Right. Essentially taking what should be an included part of a game and maybe charging $39.99 for it.
I mean,
that's a worst case that I'm kind of gaming out right now with both of you.
To be honest, I don't have a gut reaction of hating that.
Okay.
Because now keep in mind my perspective here. I absorb everything Dragon Age, absolutely everything, and I think most things are very important. I've spent way more money than $39.99 getting all the novels and the graphic novels and whatever that tell what I think is very important stories. Now, other people don't, and that's totally fine. Yeah. So another, whatever game, as long as it's somewhat fun and it's not just complete hot garbage, like that doesn't bother me because I'm used to that,
I do think an average consumer, though, would have a big problem with that. Like, if this thing that I just gamed out did happen, I do think that the average quote-unquote gamer would be uncomfortable. That it almost reminds me of way back when in Mass Effect 3, the Javik DLC, if y'all remember.
Yes, that was on the day.
And it was completely playable on the actual game. Yeah. Like, everything was there.
Disc.
Yeah, they just needed the little code. And that, a bit of an old head here, but that made people furious.
Well, people were real mad about Trespasser too, because remember, it was they couldn't run on older consoles. So anyone who had an Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 is like, well, not only do I have to buy another copy of the game, I have to buy the DLC and the other console. Like, and Trespasser really is the end of Inquisition. Like, it just does not feel complete without Inquisition. So I get why people would be mad. I wouldn't be mad because I just have my ass up in Dragon Age. But I get why people would.
Jack, how do you feel about it all?
I'm in the same boat. I live and breathe Dragon Age. I would buy it and I would play it. And I probably wouldn't even complain about it. I would just consume it. But no, I get the controversy of it, and it would be like, but it's another Dragon Age, So I would consume it.
I also think another perspective to consider here is that we've gone 5 years without content. Like,
we're literally thirsting for anything.
Just two games side by side. Like, even if we don't even get to the other one for a couple of years, like, that's I'll get to it. I guess just more content at this point is going to get me excited, even if it's bad content. Now, ask me when Dragon Age 4 comes out, I might have a whole different opinion.
Yeah, I guess
that was absolutely...
My only concern would be that it could partition off parts of a game that doesn't allow the core product, the Dragon Age 4, to be in its fullest and as best as it could be. That's only the biggest issue for me. And because I think we are in a different kind of boat than most people. If it has that name on it, we're going to get it no matter what. So it would be interesting to see what they mean by other products. If it is, like you mentioned, just a mobile game, a new iteration, if it is different services, or if it is something more substantial. What do you think about the release date? Does that seem, because they've been teasing other ones, do you think that would actually be the time frame that Dragon Age 4 is released?
Yeah, that would be 4 years of development if it's 2018. Also, April is my birthday month, so you can't pick a better. You can't pick a better month. Like, Cyberpunk was delayed recently, and I was like, no, because it was the day after my birthday. Aww. But it's the thing is, it's at a bare minimum of April 2022. So that means it could go into 2023, which gives them even more time. Which would be 4 or 5 years of development, which I think would be perfect, because we want as much, even though we're already waiting and even though we're already dying, we still want as much time as possible on this game. So if it's 4 or 5 years, perfect. Has plenty of time to bake in the oven. And we can continue to die like right now.
To say, like, I actually think that's probably more likely, because at least so far everything we've heard, like, I think BioWare themselves think it's going to be that's the release date. Like, that was in the What the Schreier articles. That's been what a couple other sources have said. I think that's the more realistic date that BioWare has set for themselves. Now, like, Inquisition was also delayed a year, so who knows if, like, that happens later on. So
Andromeda was delayed, Anthem was delayed, so that's the thing is...
How much was Anthem delayed? I think it was only a couple months for Anthem.
Only a couple of months, from 2018 to 2019, wasn't it?
Yeah, so definitely different from a whole year from Inquisition. But both of them were delayed. So I would imagine is going to, if we say April 2020, it's probably going to be like, October, November, something like that. Maybe even after that. But I do think that's actually kind of realistic.
It is interesting to think about how the landscape will be different then, because we'll be likely 2 years into new consoles at that point. So will Dragon Age 4, we have no idea how those consoles necessarily will work with backwards compatibility. It's all speculation now, but it is interesting to think if this would be a quote unquote exclusive for the next generation and for a game that's been developed. They have to be aware, obviously, that the new consoles are coming and developing for it. I wonder what that will mean for the final product that we get.
I actually worry about that a little bit.
Me too.
Because that's what happened with Inquisition. It came out right in between the releases, and it actually hindered it a lot.
It did.
And
it really did.
The last 2 DLC, Descent and Trespasser, you could not get for the older consoles. You had to get a new one. There was a lot of things that were planned for Inquisition and even like fully, for the most part, developed, but because it would not fit on the PlayStation or Xbox 360, they had to cut it. So I think, if anything, like it being in that same position again is almost a little scary. Because, like, okay, it did not work well last time. What's going to happen now?
You can still watch like the initial. It's a PAX East or West video in 2013, and you can watch the initial Dragon Age Inquisition, and they have stuff like destructible environments and cutscenes when entering a level, and so many things that were built for the Xbox One, but they were all cut because of the previous generation. So I really hope that this game is, PC and next consoles, because it really did hinder the experience.
It'd be quite a well, again, I think some of the speculation of the new consoles is that it will be a lot more open to backwards compatibility, and whatever that means, that it won't be as hindering of a next generation, literally meaning that there's a limit of what the generational gap will be. So hopefully that will not be as defined and delineated, because that would suck. Let's get back to it. We're still in November of 2019, and looking at this Google Doc, there's still a lot of Twitter links. So please, Caitie, continue.
Yeah, this is where Twitter gets pretty active, at least for me. There's so I'm not going to go over all of it, because a lot of it's just kind of like what ifs. Like more hinty posts from people that could be working on it. Probably one of the bigger things is that Joanna Berry, who is a writer, tweeted that there's voice work coming in. So meaning that whatever voice work was done has now been edited enough that they can like hear it and probably even ask for recuts, or I don't know how to make a game. Stuff like that. This is also around the time when it's the 5th birthday for Dragon Age Inquisition. A lot of people were saying that like the BioWare tweeted out that it had like a little message for Solus, and it was just a cute little thing. People was like, oh, it's a hint that Solus is coming back. Well, yeah.
Yes.
And it's in Tevinter. We've known that for years now. There was also probably one of the more interesting things is Dara starts tweeting out a whole bunch of like hinty images, and one was a screenshot of it looked like a phone picture of a screenshot, I should say. Of like a snowy scene. And the way it was styled looked something that would be in Dragon Age, which people are like, how is there snow in Tevinter? Because that's supposed to be it kind of closer to the equator. So Thedas is supposed to be in the southern hemisphere, I should say. So like Tevinter's, because it's up at the top, should be hotter. Why is there snow? To which he then actually tweets out like some blog about like how there can be snow on the equator.
It was just so random but hilarious.
So people are like, oh, so maybe it is Tevinter. Maybe this is Dragon Age 4. There's also another thing he tweeted out, which looked like a working animation of a spider. So far, every Dragon Age game has had a spider in it, so people are wondering if like that's going to be in there. So that was that. And then in December, December's just more kind of tweety stuff. We have more animators like doing stuff and tweeting about things that they're working on, just kind of like fun little things like, I got to shot a bow, what do you need for a dog, that kind of things. And this, I'm trying to think of like if there's anything that I really want to point out, because it's mostly just like
it's just tweets.
Just tweets that reference Dragon Age 4. It's really like in December 4th, this has actually been something that's been talked about in previous years. Like I know one was in HavenCon. Where people are wondering, like Patrick Week, because Patrick Weeks now goes by they them pronouns. Will there be they them pronouns in Dragon Age 4? And they were like, well, we're working on it, no guarantees, but we're trying. So it is something that BioWare is working on, but it's depending on technology. We're not quite sure. And then that was pretty much all of 2019.
Yeah, and I think if you're watching this, you'll see all the tweets coming up now. But there doesn't seem to be anything too important, except for maybe one tweet from Arby's that I think is pretty important.
Oh, well, that's...
The most important tweet
I
of
cannot
them all.
believe you missed it, Caitie. Please illuminate us. What?
I'm sorry. There's like a story behind it, though. Hold on,
There's
let
a
me
huge...
click on the...
Okay, so basically, John Epler...
Jack's got the Arby's. He's got it. All right.
Yeah, Jack's got the Arby's.
So basically,
Tell me about Arby's, Jack.
John Epler, originally they were talking about going to Wendy's and having a Wendy's, but actually no, John Epler loves Arby's. And what happened was Arby's saw this tweet, or they got tagged in the tweet, and John Epler is working to get a brand deal with Arby's for Dragon Age 4. So we should expect...
Like in a joking way. Like
in a
not
joking
for
way.
real.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Yeah,
but basically, Arby's or BioWare made a meme of the Inquisitor holding an Arby's burger. So... could this mean that we're going to see a new type of cuisine in Tevinter? I don't know.
No.
It's in the air. No, but yeah, it's funny. Now, there was a recent tweet the other day where U-Haul were actually tweeting at BioWare as well.
Oh, yeah, that one was surprising.
U-Haul.
So,
Really?
Yeah,
U-Haul.
that one's a weirder story, I think, than the Arby's.
So, you know, good brand.
Yeah, Arby's is known for
I
that
want to
stuff
tell
too.
the U-Haul story real quick because that...
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess a Twitter friend, I would say, Elle is, you know what, maybe she didn't want her name blasted out, I don't know. But Elle, I call her Elle. She and her girlfriend were just like tweeting some like funny stuff about like Liliana is confirmed like U-Haul buy. Like I don't know if I don't know if both of you know this, but there's like a joke of like I've always heard it particularly with lesbians, where like they're very quick to like move in with one another, so like they're always sponsored by U-Haul or whatever. So like that's kind of the joke, and so they were referencing that, and then U-Haul comes up with a joke with like just on two couple fans who were talking about like Dragon Age and U-Haul had a reference to Dragon Age and U-Haul in like their tweet, you know, like it was something like Liliana, the maker is gay. Explain that, Liliana, no. So it was, and then like U-Haul just kept tweeting back and forth, and it was just a very confusing time. Like, what is going on with corporate Twitter, guys? Slow down, slow down, Twitter. So Twitter's a weird place, and when I was a kid, I never thought something like U-Haul would be tweeting about Dragon Age.
It is a brave new world. It is a fascinating place. So that closes out our 2019. I feel like we already kind of discussed the big news of that year, which is, of course, the proposed release date, the idea of more products. Nothing else that I can really... Basically, just the confirmation that they are working and that work will continue.
And like voice work and animations on the work. Just, small tidbits around that stuff.
We are only about a month into, at the time of this recording, of January of 2020. But there has been, Jack, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit of news so far of this year.
Yeah, we had the first issue of Blue Wraith come out, which is always exciting because obviously it's Dragon Age media. It hints at future things, but again, the full issues are still going out. We've got another 2 to go. And Dara is just memeing. He's on the current meme trail as he always is, and he's just a constant tease, just constant teasing. And he's tweeted us basically, get a man. You know the Dolly Parton? No, sorry, not Dolly Parton.
I think it is, isn't it?
Is Dolly Parton?
I think it is a Dolly Parton based meme.
Is it a Dolly Parton meme? Basically, he said, get a man who can do all of this, and it's just instead of Tinder and the other social media, it's just Twitter. And it's actually Mark Dara tweeting out that the Rookwolf again. So does that confirm that perhaps this is still on the go, or is Dara just tweeting? Like, again, it's Dara. He just So he tweeted out the Rook, and he also tweeted out the redacted photo of Dragon Age 4, which has a tiny little corner of it that isn't unredacted. And
that's a joke, though. There's a story behind that.
Yeah, but basically Dara is again just teasing us. But there is that Rook, and it makes the question: is that Rook still relevant? Maybe not. But it's Dara. And then just the other day we got Alex Wilton Regan tweeting out this very, very, very ominous redacted tweet, basically saying, I can neither nor confirm that I'm currently working on redacted in the much anticipation of redacted opposite the A-list megastar redacted, which will be announced in redacted 2020. Thank you.
So I will say, when I read that, I thought it was a movie because now she does movies. So I don't know if that's actually Dragon Age related.
It's already been, and the thing is, it says being announced in 2020. In Dragon, it's already been announced. So again, it's Alex Wilton Regan again, but it's probably
Yeah,
she's like hashtag Dragon Age, hashtag Inquisitor, hashtag Tevinter, and we're like, oh. But
she also hashtags all her other major roles.
Like Assassin's Creed and
then you guys are really in the trenches here, it seems, eh?
Yeah. We're desperate.
Nothing else. Real quick, I just want to talk about Mark Dara, because like I feel like we've been talking about all the important stuff.
Yeah.
While there's a whole bunch of other stuff we didn't talk about when it's not important. Like there was one tweet he did, I think it was about a year ago, maybe less than that. When all he did was just shoot blurry photos of a stairwell, and then with the response of Dragon Age. Like this guy purposely just bullshits to see how many people will go
well, and like how many PC Gamer
funny.
articles will come from it and things like that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And there was one that was funny where it just said Dragon Age, Dragon Age, Dragon Age. But then you've got like ones that genuinely get triggered. And I think it's PC Gamer that are the ones that are like, well, this must be confirmed. It's like, no.
Yeah, I feel like PC Gamer, like they'll say that like Dragon Age confirmed for Solus and Tevinter. And we're like, come on, guys.
And even the developers on the game are like, we're obviously got Tevinter.
Oh man. So we did just kind of gloss over it a little bit, but the Blue Wrath is the comic graphic novel, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the one with Fenris as the main feature on the cover, but it's talking about these Tevinter characters that are going on this journey.
So I know that Jack. Sorry about that. I know that Jack, you've been at least made one video about it so far. What is there anything really noteworthy that you think needs to be said about that? Because it is new media. It is kind of in a place that we'll likely be going. You know, what's the synopsis?
Yeah, definitely. The comics as a whole, I know that Fernando D'Annunzio is very in the community, and he always is commenting on YouTube videos, and he has commented on mine a few times. And in this issue of Blue Wrath, all the characters are now together. So what he does say, he's tweeted at me a few times, is that the comic characters are created just for the comics, but with the intention of pushing the narrative forward for Dragon Age 4. So there is a lot of communication between the Dark Horse writers and BioWare in terms of where the writers at Dragon Age want the narrative to go, and how the Dark Horse writers can get to that point. They can push the narrative to that point. And so it's now focusing on Red Lyrium and a lot of basically chasing the Red Lyrium idol and trying to get this Red Lyrium artifact and this other mysterious artifact. So I can say that it is pushing the narrative forward, and that to tune into the comics, you will be getting a better idea of how it's going to establish Tevinter and Dragon Age 4. They are set in Tevinter right now. They just introduced the Arlafan Forest. So it is very interesting, environments and the narrative it's going, but ultimately it is leading up to a future for Dragon Age 4's narrative. And it is set post-Trespasser as well. So all these characters that we're being introduced to, there's a hypothetical that we could definitely nod to them in the future, but could see them. So it's not intentional, and they don't intentionally create it for that purpose, but it's something that they would love. The comic writers said that they would love for Veya and Sa'arin to be in the future games. So
something I want to touch on real quick is that like Blue Wraith isn't the only one, and we didn't actually go over any of the other media.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
I think we mentioned Hardened Hightown, and I think I glossed over the other comic years. But Knight Errant is a series that's already come out. Mage Killer came out, and then Deception. Knight Errant and Deception were both written by Nunzio De Philippis and Christina Weir, who are doing Blue Wraith, which I actually quite like them a lot. Mage Killer, I'll be honest, I forgot who wrote it. That one
I forgot who wrote it.
I'm iffy on that one. We're gonna leave that there.
Yeah.
So the Blue Wraith is the continuation of Knight Errant and Deception. So like if you're just going to buy Blue Wraith, you will be confused because it referencing those two.
It does just start completely like these characters that you already know, and this is their journey now.
It is funny.
Like the main character isn't Fenris; it's someone who was in.
It is funny though, because I do recall in Inquisition the hilarious moment, because I was not as connected to the ancillary media, where I think Varric is just mentioning like, oh yeah, by the way, Sten is the new Aeroshock. Just thought you should know. Yeah. And you're just I'm sorry, what? What was that? Yeah. Oh, this happened off screen. Okay.
Somebody didn't read the Dark Horse comics.
So it is funny just to think that, like you said, these are not going to be, from what you know, included in the main story of Dragon Age 4. But there was a moment like that way back when, where something really big happened that included the previous characters. So it will be interesting to see where that goes.
In the last issue of Deception, which came out just a couple days after the Dreadwolf Rises teaser, the very last issue was, oh, by the way, that thing you've been looking for is actually a red lyrium imbued weapon, which would be the idol now. So we're like, oh, that's what we're after right now.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that is continuing the comic, so it is actually pivotal to the narrative. Mm-hmm. Not to mention that the Qunari are invading all of Tevinter, and they've destroyed 2 cities already. So that's, again, building up the establishment of Tevinter.
Yeah.
So it is obviously very intriguing and interesting.
I got to get up on these comics, Jesus.
Forward. Yeah.
Now, I will say there is another release coming up in March of a new novel called Tevinter Nights that we haven't touched on yet. It's unlike the other novels where it's like one writer like doing a whole story. This is like a bunch of writers on the team doing like a collection
cool
of
little
short
anthology
stories.
series. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like, how many short stories? At least a couple dozen.
Oh, God, I don't even know that. It's like maybe 20 or something.
Like
it's
20,
a fair amount.
So it's going to be good tidbits of lore going everywhere.
Well, and there we have it. I think we have now, everyone, give yourself a round of applause. Great job.
We did it.
This is the formative list of every piece of information that the experts believed needed to be commented on for the development of Dragon Age 4. It is interesting just from the outset, to see how the development has changed and how tumultuous it really does seem, and whether or not this is the tumult that you expect with most games, or if maybe Dragon Age, this franchise that we love so much, is going through some real hard times in the last few years. We're very far into this show, but I want to take just a bit of time now to pick your brains, both of you, on what you really think will happen in Dragon Age 4. We've had all this different information. We have all these thoughts. You're intimately aware of the series and the different things they've touched on. If, again, you were making a bet, what do you think will be the main story arc? We'll start with that, of Dragon Age 4. Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll go first. I mean,
Yep.
I really like, and this is just obviously my complete interpretation, I really like Joplin's core concept. Playing as a spy, it logically makes sense. You go from the Inquisitor, the Herald of Andraste, having a pivotal role in basically building a massive alliance upon the south of Thedas. So the reason that we're going to have a new protagonist in Dragon Age 4 is to obviously avoid Solas. We don't want to be infiltrated by Solas' spies or Solas. So we need to play as a nobody. That makes sense. It's the natural direction to go from the Inquisition's army to then go into a small covert group of spies. Someone who can get this job done unnoticed without any hassle, basically being a nobody, so Solas can have no influence or no knowledge of their existence. So I still want to go with the idea that we will be, maybe not a spy in particular, it depends how far in deep they do go with Joplin's concept. Again, I really like that, and that is still my dream Dragon Age game, and we do know that remnants of that will be in the game, but we're going to have to play some sort of small covert role, because we can't go from being, the Inquisitor or someone huge or grandiose when the pivotal role is we need to get to Solas, infiltrated. We need to, be operating in secret, because he has spies everywhere. He's going to be everywhere, and he knows. And the Inquisitor says, we will defeat Solas, or we will do this, but we need someone new. And so I think that will be our next protagonist, this nobody. And essentially, I feel like as a spy or as this nobody, we'll be just tracking down influence, power, and information around Solas and Tevinter. We won't have any previous establishment on Solas. We won't have any knowledge, any understanding, or any experience, which makes it great for new players who want to jump on the franchise to come in. But that being said, we'll be the best person in Thedas for this task, because we'll have no knowledge and understanding of him. We'll be able to start afresh. And I think that will be the lead. And the idea of these heists, I believe, would have incorporated the idea of going in search of elven artifacts, maybe as MacGuffin items, going for trying to beat Solas to the punch, trying to get that potential power before him. And that's the idea that I took from heists. I don't think of a typical bank robbery or anything like that. I think of going through elven ruins across Tevinter, or in elven forests, or going across these ancient places in search of relics that would beat the punch to Solas. Tracking down information on this elven god, stealing magical artifacts, and organizing these strategic heists.
If you had to guess,
then,
how do you think your hope, at least, and this is why I love talking to y'all about this, how do you think this story would end? We get to speculate, we get to input what we know.
Okay, this is, the grandiose. Okay, I'm just going to go full on, I call it tinfoil, full on stupid. Just going full on. Okay, Solas is going to go back to Skyhold and he's going to destroy the veil there. And I think he's going to actually destroy the veil because the law, apparently, potentially law potentially the veil was created at Skyhold because it's the place where the sky was held back. Again, law, whatever.
Celestial law.
There you go. So I think that Solas will inevitably destroy the veil, and our Inquisitor will either fight him or oppose him, or Llywelyn will get some sort of confrontation that they can try and just win him back, but inevitably he will destroy the veil or he will die, because Solas walks through Dinan Shiral, and that means that his journey is full of what does it mean? I walk the journey my journey. I walk the journey of
death.
Of death. I walk the journey of death. Yeah. So he's walking into his own suicide, and he knows that, and he's self-aware of that. And he even says himself he is going to die. So I think that he will either die in the Inquisitor's arms if you romance him, or he'll die fighting the Inquisitor, or the Inquisitor will be his death. But the Inquisitor will also die. That's how.
Oh, what?
I think that they're going to end the narrative of the Inquisitor and Solas together, because my whole issue, my reason that Dragon Age 4 will like the thing I don't like is the fact that the Inquisitor started the journey with Solas, and therefore they need to end the journey with Solas. Like, you know, it's their villain, it's their friend, it's their lover, he's their companion. You know, you ever become his best friend, or you ever hated him, or you ever romanced him. And I feel like if it just ends without the Inquisitor being there, or without the Inquisitor having a piece in this narrative, it's just going to feel underwhelming. Because, you know, we've been there since the start. He's the one who's been lying to us from the start, or he's been with us since the start. And if it doesn't end with either Solas or the Inquisitor together, then
it's a little bit like the Hawk and Varric thing from the previous games in Inquisition, that he was there as kind of a witness of Hawk's story.
Yeah.
Now, I have a completely
okay, but I just before we go to that, so just again, because I love summaries, it helps my brain work with everything. You're hoping at least spy, doing heists, dealing with the completely new elven artifacts, fighting for power, and then final scenes. People are dying. Solas is dying. He's ripping up the universe. Something to do with his love interest, but the Inquisitor is going to be there in the final moments. That's your guarantee.
Yeah, that's my guarantee. And the idea of that these heists would be like OG BioWare missions, like the Suicide Mission in Mass Effect 2, like the level of thought and depth put into them. Yeah, that's why I like heists, because, you know, this character can do that, and that character can do this, and, you know, and that's what OG BioWare is to me, is these epic missions.
And I love as well doing like I'm thinking of Mass Effect 2, when you play so you fuck up everything and everyone dies. I would love to have that as an option in Dragon Age.
Yes, exactly. Like the whole multiple choice thing and having different endings where Solas can destroy the veil and maybe he doesn't die. Maybe you see him in Mafal getting ready to do whatever. But or you have him where it's a really sad ending and everyone, you know, is sad that Solas has died, but Thedas is saved or whatever. And I really like that. So yeah, that's my very random, I admit, stupid idea, but it's something in hopes of what I would like.
All right. So you had your time. Now, Caitie, please illuminate us. What do you think?
So I want to say my versions may be similar but different from Jack. So first, if Heist can come back, because I don't know if they ever fully figured out how that would actually work within the engine. So let's just assume it does. And I will say I'm not going to guarantee anything, because I'm always super bad at predicting the future. So just throwing that out there. There is no Ghildirthalen guarantee. It's just a maybe. So I would say, instead of going, Jack, on your idea, instead of going to Heist and Elven Ruins, Arlathan and all the Elven Ruins were sacked by people in Tevinter. So I think there's Tevinter nobles hoarding just these very important artifacts in their households, museums, crypts, whatever the fuck. So I think you're actually going to be breaking into those places around Tevinter, which is why the game's set in Tevinter. So you're really just breaking into other people's homes and stealing their shit because it's very important. Because everyone hates Tevinter, you're like, hey, that's actually kind of cool.
Oh, I like that.
And which is also why you need to be a new protagonist, because you find out the Inquisitor, who is also associated with now a Magister and Dorian, are breaking into other Magisters and very important people's homes. People are going to be very upset.
Yeah.
That's something you can't really do on paper. So I think that's kind of going to be where this comes in. Now, who the protagonist is, so far out of the three, we've had two that this is kind of sort of have a MacGuffin thing going on, the Inquisitor with their hand, the Warden being the only Warden in Ferelden who's competent, and Hawk was just some nobody. I would say that we kind of either a heist goes wrong and we get something in the Inquisitor and now we're marked with some MacGuffin that we can do, or we're some nobody like Hawk. I would kind of hope it's a nobody, but I think either could be happening.
Okay, so you're thinking it's a possibility that like you're part of a team that is trying to steal something from one of these Tevinter Lords' homes, and then wait a second, now you have a crazy magic thing, and now you're a part of the story.
Yeah. It's like attached to your arm and you can't get rid of it. What do? Like something like that. Which is essentially the mark from Dragon Age Inquisition. So I think I would be most disappointed at that, and I just hope it's like you're just a really good thief and that's about it. But I could see something like one of those.
Yeah, so that's the intro. That's you're thinking maybe there. I'm very interested how you think this story, this Dragon Age 4 story, is going to end.
So far they have set up. There's not every Dragon Age game has more than just the main arc, and I think there's three major arcs that they've been doing. There's obviously Solus Sling, there's the Canary invading, and then there's slavery in Tevinter. All three of those have been three major plot points, and like social change in Tevinter has been like a huge topic in both Inquisition, the comics, and just in the games in general. So I think somehow you're going to have to tie those all three together. At this moment, I'm not quite sure how to fit the Canary there. I think that fitting in the slavery aspect can be actually pretty easy because Fen Harel, our Solus, in the history of Thedas, was once like he built his organization on freeing slaves. It'd be very easy for him to do it again. So all of his minions could just be the slaves of Tevinter, and he just like takes them under the wing, like, you're now my people. Also, I'm going to kill you the next couple months, but you guys don't know that yet. So I could see that happening, and so we're trying to fight Solus as the struggle of who's going to get to free the slaves and who's going to have them on their side. So I could see that being an issue. Yeah. The Canary, I think, might just be like kind of almost a red herring, where like Canary, can you just like hold on a second? Can you just we have a whole world to save? Like, if anything, I think they're just going to be like we need something to just mess up here, so the Canary are going to come up and attack. I don't know if they're actually going to play that big of a deal unless they somehow have some sort of MacGuffin that was on Saharan that we don't know about.
Okay.
So, which we know they have been collecting elven artifacts and trespassers, so I think that's completely like plausible that they have.
No, so those are the. Oh, sorry, continue.
Oh no!
That's what is plausible, I guess. But I also want to know a little bit of like what you're hoping. Like, what's that moment that you're hoping for in this game? If I'm really being honest, I would love, and I think they've been inching towards this in the previous iterations, for the choices that are made to have groundbreaking consequences in the world, whether it has to do with the Titans, whether it has to do with the Canary literally taking over Tevinter and having a whole new regime in that way. I want to have the moments that I had in Dragon Age Origins, where there was that sense of finality in the epilogue, and experience that in Dragon Age 4. That is my biggest and almost only hope at this moment. So I'd love to hear some of your kind of hopes. I think both of you have been very diplomatic of, we've been looking at this as what we think. Now get wild with it. What's going to make you...
I put the tinfoil on, so...
I guess so. I think it would be good to have like those very like big impacting moments. I don't know if they can do that anymore, because they want to have a game series. Yeah. So like if even like we pick the ruler in Orlais, like I don't know if we'll actually ever go to Orlais again and have that choice matter, just because like there's so many choices that they have to juggle. It's going to be very hard for them to like have other games and have that be a consideration. So I almost think that they're trying to future-proof themselves in a way, so we're like the Origin epilogue has actually been one of the worst things for Dragon Age lore making, and as David Gator said, it was one of his biggest regrets, because so many things they had to be rewritten. So I as cool as it is, I don't know if they'll ever go that again, because it's just very hard to write for. You kind of have this thing in the game where like you start off all in the same place, the middle bit's wildly different, and then you all end in the same place. And I think that's kind of what we're going to have to hope for with the current engine we're on.
Jack?
Yeah, so
No, yeah. In terms of, like, you want my massive hope, then we'll get, an epilogue to... playing it diplomatic, but I want a good epilogue to Solas's story, but of course we're going to get that. Do you want me to go... Okay, I'll go crazy for it. Griffins. There you go.
All right, that's fair. I do have... I know I'm more, like... I don't like having hard facts with, this speculation type of stuff, because I don't know. I don't think like that, I think. But one thing I will say, to critique what you think about happening with Solas. I agree with you that he's going to either want to tear down the veil or die. But I don't think the Inquisitor's going to die at all.
Okay.
That I think that'd be kind of shitty to people who really hate Solas. So like, I killed him and then I died. Fuck off. Yeah, I would
What if your choice in Trespasser was to then choose that you would kill Solas, and that's why they die, because they're too vengeful to want to kill him, that they end up in their own demise? So it's kind of a choice that's reflected on themselves.
Then that would be a little bit better. But like, I don't know. I'm still kind of iffy on it. I think.
Yeah.
I think what I think is going to happen to Solas is no matter what, he is going to either get trapped in a way, because it's very hard to kill the Evanuris, and he is considered one of them. So I think he has some... If anything, I think we might get a very early on death of Solas, and we're like, oh, we fucking did it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But then he rises up and be like, haha, nerds. You forgot I just destroyed elven gods, and you think that's going to kill me?
That would be nice.
I think that's going to be a moment in the game, because that would be really interesting. I also think at one point he's going to turn into the big bad wolf thing. And
there is no reality where you are not fighting a big wolf in Dragon Age 4.
Yeah.
Which if you're not, that is a huge mistake.
We didn't even think about that. Do you think this will be called Dragon Age 4, or will it be called something else?
Oh no.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. Well, I know me and Caitie talked about that, but obviously it's about the numerical number. I like the name Dragon Age Imperium, but it's pretty boring. But it's DI again, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's why I don't.
DI, So then I know Caitie likes Dragon Age Unveiled.
No. I have no
like
favorites.
I don't think people want to say the word unveiled.
I joked unveiled because I thought it was funny.
I don't know if that's a good promo word.
Okay. No, I know. Or it could just be Dragon Age 4.
No, I don't think they do a number again, because they greatly regretted doing the Dragon Age 2 number.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, originally it was going to be Dragon Age Exodus, and they liked that one a lot. And then EA is like, but no one's going to know it's Dragon Age, so they made Dragon Age 2. So yeah, I know it is. I really think it's going to have some sort of subtitle. I cannot even.
Yeah. No,
it might even be like
maybe the Dreadwolf. They seem to be doing those hashtags and pushing that. That's the basic form of media that they've done so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might be Rises, like Dragon Age Rises. Like it might.
That's not bad. That goes off the tongue.
That's not bad at all. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I could be for that. Now I really want to quickly throw out a theory that I have about the Solas thing. I think he's going to die no matter what.
Yeah.
Or get trapped or something. But I think for a Ghildirthalen, they're going to like really just smush it in with their little thumb about how painful this choice is. And so I'm basing this off of a movie that was actually referenced in Inquisition between Solas and Cole. And the movie is called Meet Joe Black. Have either of you guys seen that movie? Yeah. Okay. So you know the end of the basic plot. Spoilers if you haven't seen it. The movie is death. Some guy dies, meets a girl, dies, and then gets possessed by death. Then meets that girl again. The girl falls in love with death, and so he wants to take her with him. Like, I'm going to take you on to the afterlife. And she's like, oh, that's kind of scary. I'm going to think so. And he goes, okay. Then from now on, you're always going to meet the guy that you met before, and then he's now someone new. I think it's going to be something like that, where if you go into Solas's companion quest, which really comes out of nowhere when you think about his whole storyline. His whole companion story quest is that he has a friend that he likes very much, and then the friend dies, and he's really sad about it. And when you ask him, like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Well, I mean, my friend will come back, but it's not going to be the same." I think that's foreshadowing what could happen to Solas. And I think that's Solas's happy end, is that he's going to have some sort of, like, comeback again. But he's, like, either not going to have his memories, he's not going to be the same, something like that. And maybe that's the Solas you can reason with. And that's the Solas clever. That, I don't know, the Ghildirthalen runs away with. And maybe there's going to have to be a lot of decisions of, like, can we trust this new Solas? Like, is he going to just do what he did before? If he's kind of, like, Can we make him good, so to speak? Is he on our side? Like, I think that would be a more interesting ending to Solas' story, and I would like it if it ended there.
That's a good. I like that. Do you believe it's Solas the spirit?
I think originally, yeah.
Yeah, and then he was brought into the world, and then he just was given a body. That idea could totally work with that idea. Obviously, if his spirit dies, they come back, but it's someone different. Could totally work. Do you want like another crazy ambition?
What's that? Sorry, go ahead.
Sure.
Do you want like another I'd like to see the Evanurus towards the end of the game, but that's also like, are they going to put more Evanurus in the game? But I feel like, the way that the veil, the destruction of the veil would bring. I feel like the destruction of the veil would be like a midpoint or a 75% point for the game, and then there would be this end, like this second part to the narrative where you would have the Evanurus return and you would have the consequences of that, or if we were to see the consequences, or what would happen with that.
I do think they are inching towards that, like of where it is. They've dealt with these worlds, they dealt with the Blight, they dealt with what's going on in Inquisition. Now there's going to be some world sundering choices throughout. Yeah. I think it might do the classic BioWare thing where, wow, there's tons of world sundering choices, everything changes, but then in the last 20 minutes, everything kind of comes to the one same data point that everyone has. Like that is likely, but
and everyone's happy and we're all partying.
I do think there's a good possibility of that happening, but I do think that we're going to get, and it's kind of, again, the way it's been going, that it's just things need to get more epic. Things need to get more massive to the whole global world that we have here in Dragon Age.
Well, there is a climate for that. We do have, the Titans that are, somewhat awaking. We have 2 Blights remaining. We have Solas and the Veil potentially being destroyed, and the Evanurus that lurk behind the Veil. And
have
so
the
many
Warden on a cure for the calling from a land that's not in Thedas. We have those across the sea, the Executors. There's also hinting at places that aren't anywhere.
So what if
right now.
Dragon Age 4, this iteration, ends the story here of this part of the world, and the next iteration allowing us to have some like real pretty final big choices for this world, and then making the new iteration go to a completely new place that doesn't require as much of the continuity that you would if you're still messing about in this area.
So the Mass Effect Andromeda.
The exact Mass Effect Andromeda.
Yeah, I would be fine with that. Yeah, I think I would be very happy with Dragon Age 4 wrapping up the whole story. Good luck with that, because there's a lot of loose ends.
I really do think they're going to make some massive big choices in this one. It feels like it's been ramping up to that, and the problem that you said of if they do things that are world rendering, it will destroy trying to build the series anymore. So seeing how they deal with that will be absolutely fascinating. Is there any final thoughts and feelings that either of you would like to share about the world of...
I think that the end of Dragon Age will be Mafal's death, and I think that will usher on a new age. Because I know it's very basic, but like Morrigan is the inheritor of the next age, and Mafal, who is Flameth or whatever, is, it could be an OG dragon. And she could just be eponymous of the franchise as Dragon Age. Very simple, but that's what I think.
I guess I could get behind that. I haven't thought about that, but I guess I could get behind it.
Just to usher on, a different age. So then you can have, your next age, whatever that could be called.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would definitely say that Dragon Age should end when the actual, like, for those who don't know the Thedas calendar, everything's been 100-year increments, and we're currently in the Dragon Age of the 100-year increments, and we're about halfway through it. So I would say if we end now, supposedly Dragon Age 4, let's be crazy, say it's 5 years after Trespasser, so it would be around about in the midpoint. We still have 50 years of the age left, so I would even think that there might be another game set kind of in that 50-year period where things would go crazy.
Oh, I like the idea of Dragon Age 4 being 50 years and showing like generational changes. I like that.
That would be interesting, yeah. Although it'd be really hard to have like, maybe. Well, then you can almost have like a what was that game? It was like a little like rogue dungeon game where like you kept playing your ancestor if you died.
Ooh, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, oh god, what was that called?
Anyways.
It was something like that. You could like breed. You're choosing romance partners to breed to the perfect super soldier to fight Solus. You know what I mean? That's craziness going to happen. But that could be interesting.
Amazing. Well, I wanted to thank both of you so much. This is great. diving into the world of Dragon Age with 2 experts again. I'm Andy Burkowski, VGS Video Game Sophistry. You can check out all of the stuff that I'm doing there. It's a little more breadth than just Dragon Age. Can't compete with these two. And yeah, please tell the world what you're doing, who you are, as we finish this out.
Jack, you go, because I started the intro.
No, thank you so much, Andy, for having us on. I really, really appreciate it. I'm Jackdaw, and again, if there's any Dragon Age 4 news, I'll be covering it in the video. Anything we hear, even if it's just a silly, dumb tweet, yeah, you can check out my channel for all those silly tweets that Dara likes to tease.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm Caitie. Again, to echo Jack, thanks for having us on, Andy. If you want news, you definitely go to Jack. I'm more the Dragon Age lore. My YouTube channel is Ghildirthalen. You can find me on Twitter at Ghildirthalen too. Where I'll retweet the silly tweets, but like I don't got time to make news videos. I don't know how you do it. so if you want lore in the Dragon Age, then you go. Me. But
well, we got to do this again, folks. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Oh, we'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah, we loved it. I loved it. Awesome.